Hello and welcome back to my channel. Now today, as you can probably see from the title, we're doing a consensus big board for the 2021 NFL mock draft. I have a 50 player big board that I created, basically combining all of the top analysts' big boards. Now I'm going to quickly jump over and show you guys exactly how I came up with this for those of you wondering, and then I'll hop right back on the draft network where I put in the big board to show you guys how it all fell out. Alright, so this is basically where it all happened for what I did. If you can see here, what I did is I put in all of the players from the drafts right here on this left side. It ended up being 74 different players from all the big boards. And basically I started with PFF, then I went through Daniel Jeremiah's big board, then I went through the Draft Network, Matt Miller, Todd McShane, Mel Kiper, and I basically went whoever the first player was on their board got the most points. So on a 50 player big board, like these first four, you got 50 points for being the number one player. And then if you look down, I gave 1 point to the last player, 0 if you weren't even on their big board. And so I went through all these big boards. Now mention Todd McShay and Mel Kiper only had 32 and 25 players respectively on their big boards, so there's less points there. But then I basically went up and added all the points for every single player in here, and then just sort them by the most points to least points, and then ended up getting my top 50. And there's some people that missed out. It was kind of interesting to see some of the players that some were higher, some different mock drafts were higher, big boards were higher on. As you see, some of the high zeros, like Christian Barmore wasn't even on Mel Kiper's, but it was a lower one. You have a guy here like Bateman, who's really high on the Draft Network at 32, and PFF at 33, but then 5, 0, and 0, basically almost off most of the other ones. Same if you go down here, a guy like Jason Oway, really high on PFF, and Daniel Jeremiah, but almost not even mentioned on any of the other big boards. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to jump back in. We're going to go over the big board, talk about some players that didn't make the big board, but this is how you do it. This is how I did it. If you have any suggestions on how to even make it better, or any other big boards that I should throw in here, I try to get most of the big ones that I could find, but I could definitely be open to throwing some more in there. But anyways, we're gonna jump back over, and I'll see you guys over there. Alright, so now we're at what everybody has been waiting for, the consensus big board for the 2021 NFL draft. Now I'm starting at the bottom. I'm gonna actually quickly go over players who didn't make the big board, and then we'll go up to number one on the big board. Now, some of the players that I was kind of surprised that didn't make the big board, I guess a guy like Elijah Molden was high on a couple of them, but he was also off a couple of the other big boards. He was very up and down on them. There's another guy like Daimi Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown that I think were only really on one big board, but as you can see on the Draft Network, they have them at 49 and 50 respectively. Another guy like Liam Eichenberg was only on one or two. There's not really a lot of guys that I was kind of surprised left off. A lot of the guys that you'll see here, mostly guys up on the top of this page, were only on, they might have been on one, maybe two at the very bottom of the big boards. But there was really a general consensus. I mean, as you saw when I took all of the big boards, there were only 74 total players. So that's not bad if there's 74 out of 50 basically kind of consensus players. That's narrowing down a decent amount for the draft. So that's basically what we kind of expect in the first two rounds of the draft, are these guys to go. Now, starting at the bottom, we have some of the guys that were only on a couple. You have guys like Wyatt Davis and Javon Holland on a couple of them. A guy like Elijah Moore actually surprised me being down at 48, because I know he's really high on a couple boards, especially like PFF. He's decently high. He's also really low on a couple other boards, so that's what made him fall. Javonte Williams actually wasn't even on many of the big boards when I was looking. Him and Baron Brown weren't on many big boards actually in total, but those two were decently high on the big board that they were on, so therefore they jump up. Greg Newsome, Landon Dickerson kind of surprised me being up there, and Jamin Davis, I know he's been a late riser, but he was pretty consistent throughout a couple of the big boards that he was on. Going through Jabril Cox, Pat Freiermuth, these are most of your second round guys that we're getting through. Rondale Moore was another one who was really high on a guy like on PFF's board, then really low on a lot of other boards. And then Terence Marshall was almost the opposite. Wasn't on the first couple boards I did, but then the last couple ones he was decently high on a couple of them. So he's another late riser. These are more guys, Owuso and Oway, very very varied on the different big boards where they were. They're coming in at 36 and 35. Davion Nixon, another one, wasn't even on some boards. I'm pretty sure when I was looking on the Draft Network, he was like their DT number 6. So he's a very controversial player right now. Some guys really love him and they have him as a first-round talent, and some guys think he's a third-round talent, late day 2 talent. So it's going to be really interesting to see what NFL teams think on Davion Nixon, because I know he's very controversial within a lot of the draft community right now. Another guy, Joe Tryon, making it at 32, just one out of the first round. He's a very interesting one. He's a late riser. A lot of people are jumping on board with him right now. He didn't play this past year. It'll be interesting to see. I know there's some guys like PFF are a lot lower on him. They've talked about it many times. If you go check out their stuff on him, they're a lot lower. But then you have a lot of guys like, I know Daniel Jeremiah and some of the other guys are a lot higher on him. He was decently high on a decent amount of mock drafts, or big boards, sorry. But I think the reason he's at 33 here is because of that PFF. I don't think he was even on their top 50, but he was decently high on. So that's pretty impressive to be at 33 when he got a complete 0 from PFF on their big board rankings. Going in, we have our first quarterback, Mac Jones, here at 32. I know Kyle Trask was actually on. I believe, 2 of the different top 50 big boards, but he doesn't make the consensus top 50. Mac Jones slides in there at 32 for the consensus top 50 big board for players in this draft. We have Rashad Bateman, a little lower than I thought, at 31. I thought Rashad Bateman would be a little higher, but not too surprising. Some people are lower on him than others. I know a guy like Bucky Brooks had him lower originally, but he just was on the 2-for-1 Pro Football Focus podcast, and he was actually saying Rashad Bateman might be sliding up a lot on his big board after watching more of his tape. Kind of a recency bias kind of guy. A lot of people, because he didn't play this past year, a lot of people are kind of forgetting, and they're looking at some of the new guys that played this year, whereas you kind of forget how good Rashad Bateman is, and that speed's not everything at the receiver, and just because he doesn't have speed doesn't mean he can't be great. His releases in route running are just top-notch in the draft class, so he definitely deserves to be high on this list. We got Tevin Jenkins and Christian Barmore in Mayfield. We got some linemen sliding in here between 30 and 28. Christian Barmore was another interesting one. High on some boards, low on some other ones. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be an early talent, especially with how weak this D-tackle classes or interior D-line classes. I think he could jump up because I think there's a huge drop between Barmore and then you get to your guys like Mixon and Wuzuriki, Twyman, and some of those guys. I think there's a big drop because if you look at guy like Wuzuriki, he's a run stuffer. He's not going to get much in the pass game. Davion Nixon, we've already talked about, very up and down. It'll be interesting to see what he is, but I think Christian Barmore is an all-around solid Alabama lineman talent. Mayfield, another guy, I know PFF's really low on him, but a lot of other people are really high on him, so he probably could be even higher if the PFF wasn't included. We got guys like Nick Bolton, Ojulari, not too surprising, sliding in near the end of the first round. That was a lot of consensus around a lot of the big boards I was filling out. Then we got the 2 running backs sliding in here at 24 and 25. Etienne first at 24 and Najee Harris at 25. That's interesting because PFF does their big boards with based tons on position value, and they value running back very lowly, which is reasonable. Running back shouldn't be valued too high in the draft, but those two would probably definitely be higher because I'm pretty sure Etienne slid in around 48 to 50 on PFF's board, and Najee Harris wasn't even on PFF's top 50. So those two sliding in right there, I feel like that's about reasonable if you want to take in value of a running back along with how good of athletes they are. If you don't care about value of the position, they definitely would jump higher above some other guys, but funny that they slide in right next to each other. They're at 24 and 25. Now sliding up, we got Zaven Collins and J.C. Horn. I think another guy is probably going to go late first round. Probably about right where they are. A lot of consensus going here on 22, 23. Not too surprised. Kadarius Toney is one that surprised me here at 21. I've seen him falling into later. I've seen him falling more and more because I think a lot of the hype around the Senior Bowl got him up on some boards, and he's been falling back down on some. I'm actually really surprised that he's all the way here up at 21. I can't remember exactly for him. There must have been some of the big boards that had him high. I know he was consistently on a lot of the big boards, but I'm surprised that he's all the way up here at 21. I guess that's maybe some of these players that are higher, you see, because if you're consistently on every big board at a decent rating, then you're gonna be higher to the top than some of the more inconsistent guys that I was talking about, more like the running backs and Christian Barmore and Jalen Mayfield. Now going up, we have Elijah Vera Tucker. He's definitely probably the best interior. He could still, people are saying he could still play tackle, which he definitely could, but he's definitely, if he plays interior, he's definitely probably the best interior lineman. Unless you're counting Rashaan Slater as a guard, then he is. But going on, Gregory Rousseau at 19, another one that was very consistently in the teens for a lot of big boards, so he slides near the end of the teens here. A little bit surprising, but with how top-heavy this class is, not too shocking. Trayvon Morig, I was happy to see all the way here at 18. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. I mean, safety is becoming more and more valuable, I feel like, every year, and Trayvon Morig's just a jack of all trades at the safety. I love what he can do. He's sliding up a lot of boards right now here at 18. Jalen Phillips is where it surprised me here. Jalen Phillips is 2 spots above Gregory Rousseau. Now, I know that Jalen Phillips has all the talent and stuff, but I've been scared with his medical history. I know probably a lot of teams are too, but I guess they're looking at a lot of the talent. Big boards, are you looking at talent? And Jalen Phillips has tons of talent. I don't think he'll go before Gregory Rousseau. I could easily be wrong. If he passes all the physicals and checks out with teams, he maybe could. I still see Rousseau over Jalen Phillips, but it's interesting to see there that Jalen Phillips is above him. Going on, we have Darrisaw at 16, Kwity Paye at 15, your number 1 edge rusher in the class. Not too surprising. He was high on a lot of boards, consistently up on the boards. That's why he drops in at 15. And then JOK, Jeremiah Owuso Coramoa, in at 14. That surprised me a little how high he was. I know he's kind of the jack of all trades. Can play your safety. He can play your nickel. He can play linebacker. Don't know if he'll play all of those at the next level with how much the athleticism jumps from college to the pros, but signing at 14, I feel that's a good spot for him. He's not one of those, because I feel like once you get into 13 and up, it's kind of almost as top 10 talents, because they're probably going to go 10. I don't know. I don't think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a top 10 talent, but he definitely will probably go in the teens. I have him in the 20s in my mock draft, but the more and more I think about it, I don't know if he'll last all the way until the 20s. Probably a teens pick in the draft, so at the top, getting close to that top 10 at 14, that's pretty cool to see for JOK, another guy that's been rising lately. Trey Lands, our first quarterback, in at 13, not surprising. Last quarterback out of the big guys in the class above Mac Jones. Sliding in at 13, that fringe top 10 kind of territory. And then we have another pair of positions, Surtain and Farley at 12 and 11. Interesting to see. I think almost every single big board, maybe taking out one or two, had Farley over Surtain, which is interesting to see. I think it's been a lot of flip-flop between the two. You know, they're pretty different players. Caleb Farley hasn't played the position much. Kind of has that downhill attitude. He's more athletic. He's going to get in your face, and he's going to make the big tackles. That's one thing I love about Farley. But Surtain's definitely a more polished cornerback. He's long. He's not the fastest, but he'll keep up with you because of his technique. He's the son of a former NFL player, so he's got all of the tricks in his back pocket that he's very professional. So as you see those two sliding in right next to each other, let me know what you guys think. That's another one that, let me know who you prefer out of Farley and Surtain. I feel like it could depend on the team and the system that you're running, but those two are definitely 1A, 1B when it comes to corner. Sliding in to the top 10, we have Rashaan Slater at 10. The offensive tackle could be guard, but a lot of tackle. He was really high on a couple boards. I know Daniel Jeremiah has him really high. He's top 10 on a couple boards, a little lower on some others. I think the most consensus is that he's the number 2 tackle in the class. I believe Daniel Jeremiah is the only person I know in the draft community that has Rashaan Slater over Penei Sewell for tackle number 1. Don't know exactly. I guess I heard Bucky Brooks talk about. He likes his fundamentals and his techniques a little bit more. Penei Sewell is just a beast. I think Rashaan Slater slides in there nice at 10. We have Justin Fields sliding in at 9, which is interesting because he was up at like number 2, number 3, number 4 on a couple big boards, but another couple had him down around 11, 12, so he slides in, averaging here in about 9. Then we got Devonte Smith at 8, and another interesting one, Zach Wilson at 7. I thought he was going to be up in that top 3 for sure. He probably will go top 3, but I guess when you're looking at it, quarterback definitely will rise him up in the draft. But when you're looking at big board, you try and take a little bit of that position value and team needs out, because you definitely want to incorporate position value, but team needs definitely goes right out the window in big board, and that's a lot of what Zach Wilson might go higher because of team needs. But I feel like he could be the number 1 QB if Trevor Lawrence was in the class. I think he's good enough, so it's interesting to see him all the way down at 7. With Jalen Waddle, another guy who was, I know he was wide receiver 1 on a couple boards. I think he was actually wide receiver 1 on the Draft Network. A lot of people are really high on him. They love his athleticism, what he can do. Definitely the consensus I found throughout the mock drafts was Devonte Smith was wide receiver 3. Now, a lot of mix-up between Chase and Waddle, but as you can see here with the separation on the big board, Ja'Marr Chase being 3 and Waddle being 6, there's definitely more of a consensus that Ja'Marr Chase is the number 1 receiver. Waddle is that number 2 guy, and Devonta Smith is the number 3. Going up, Micah Parsons all the way up at number 5. That was another interesting one. Lower on some boards, higher on some other ones. But he's definitely a beast. He's one of the guys that, on a big board, you definitely got to put him in the top 5, because he's definitely probably one of the top 5 most talented players in this draft class. The only reason he might fall a little in the draft is because that linebacker position value isn't too high on linebacker, so he might fall a little because you don't really want to take a linebacker top 5. But he'll probably still definitely go top 10. He's definitely a top 5 talent if you look at it all in the grand scheme of things. Moving on, Kyle Pitts at number 4. Another guy who's been going around saying he could be like the number 1 pure talent player in the class. He slides in at number 4 on our consensus big board here. He's a beast. He's definitely a top 5 player in this big board. I would even slide him higher. But, yeah, there's definitely not much you can say about him being in the top 5. Ja'Marr Chase coming at number 3. He was really high. Number 2 on a couple boards, I know. I mean, a lot of people love Ja'Marr Chase. It's pretty consensus, as you can see, if he's all the way up here at 3, that he's definitely probably receiver 1 and one of the best talents in this class. Surprisingly, he's over Pitts, but sliding at number 3 does him well right there. Moving on, Penei Sewell at number 2. That's another very consensus one. A lot of people have Penei Sewell there. Definitely the best tackle in this class, unless you're Daniel Jeremiah, then Rashaan Slater is. But otherwise, Penei Sewell is your number 1 tackle in this class, and he's one of the best tackles we've had in a while in the draft, so he's definitely number 2. And then Trevor Lawrence, the undisputed number 1. He was number 1 on every single big board that I did. He was number 1. There's no disputing. Everyone he's done so much in college from his success. You've seen the arm talent. You've seen that he can run. He's good at reading the defenses. He's good at controlling the offense. And he does a lot of pro-ready stuff already in college about seeing the matchups before the plays, going to your favorable matchups. A lot of stuff that these coaches are going to love. He's definitely your consensus number 1. He's going number 1 overall, bar something strange from Jacksonville, which I guess I don't put it past Jacksonville. But Trevor Lawrence should be your number 1 pick. No surprises there. If I go ahead and just save this, they're not going to let me save the big board. Never mind. I haven't signed into my account, but I'll just quickly scroll through it. Need to look through anything. Let me know what you guys think about the big board. If there's any interesting players in here that you didn't expect to be top 50. Any players in here, on available players that you thought were going to make it that didn't end up making it. There's not too many surprises for me. Obviously, we saw 74, so there's like 24 players on here that were on big boards, mostly the top 50s that didn't end up making this top 50. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. And then I have a cool little new different take on a mock draft that I'm going to be putting out in a couple days, so keep your eyes out on that one. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching.